thanks everyone for braving the traffic and coming out. I'm again, huge admirer of EFF, so again, great to be here. A little more backstory on who I am. I started working at South by Southwest in 1989, way back before there were cars and electricity and things like that. The event started as a music-only event in 1987, so I came on 2 years later. And my origin stories are pretty accurate, sometimes a little bit of embellishment, as I got hired because I had a computer and they didn't. Another lecture for another time. Again, South by Southwest was entirely music when it first started in 1987. 1994, I worked with Dewey Winburn to launch a thing called South by Southwest Multimedia. That eventually changed to South by Southwest Interactive, I think in 1999 or 2000. More recently, I became Chief Programming Officer, so I was overseeing all the conference and the festival programming, and I was also eventually became co-president and president. I left the organization in late April 2025, not by my own doing, but that's again another lecture for another time. I have now started a company called Gather and Grow Experiences, which is basically a consulting company for other people, organizations around Austin, around the US, and around the world that want to try to create experiences. I have a strong belief in the power of community. I have a strong belief in the power of face-to-face and a face-to-face, IRL, person-to-person, however you want to describe that, in a world that is increasingly virtual and automated. And we'll say that is what we're all doing tonight. We're all together, one place, one time, can share experiences, learn from each other, see that we're a lot more in common than we are different. Otherwise, so this time of the year, March in Austin is all about the future. We have new technologies, new bands, new filmmakers, new ideas, new connections, new opportunities, new collaborations. In its best moments, South by Southwest, from 1987 forward, has been this focus on new, and that's what makes the event, I think, one of the things that makes the event so impactful. So, of course, I'm going to go the exact opposite direction and talk about what is old as opposed to what is new. For a few minutes, indulge me while we ride the Wayback Machine 20 years back, 19 years back to 2007. And that gets the title of my presentation tonight: How South by Southwest 2007 Ruined Austin, How South by Southwest 2007 Ruined the Internet and Ruined the World. So just some small themes there. Okay, 2007. Strangely, we were very much then like we are now. We were at war in the Middle East, although it was Iraq then and it's Iran now. So a little bit of changes, but not too many changes. There was a young senator from Illinois who had just launched his campaign to be president. That would be one Barack Obama, looking very young there. And if you remember, 2007 was the first year of the iPhone. 20 years ago, first year of the iPhone, how much that would change everything. Here in Austin, the population was roughly 750,000. That compares now to 1 million, 2 million. But again, much smaller 20 years ago. Our mayor, 2007, or between Kirk Watson terms, so that was Will Wynn.
Great name.
This was the Austin skyline, 2007. What city? And the tallest building is the Frost Building, 2007. Big band in 2007, Overkill River. Everyone remember them? I think they're still around, right?
Yeah, I think I still play.
And they're probably playing South by Southwest this week. And 2007 was the first major label release of Spoon. They kind of propelled them to national, international fame. If we're talking about things at South by Southwest, there are movies here in 2007. That was when Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez did Death Proof with Kurt Russell. That was 2007 Austin. South by Southwest in 2007, still a really big music event. About 1,300 to 1,400 bands, which is actually much larger than where we are now. I think they're probably at 700 bands this year. I think that was back when we still had this goal of having 90 or 100 clubs. It's smaller now. But music was certainly the big driver of South by Southwest in 2007. Keynote speaker that year, that is the guitarist from The Who, Pete Townsend. Iggy Pop was also at South by Southwest 2007. He did some kind of presentation, lecture, whatnot, and he didn't change his shirt when he went to Waterloo to play show. That was him in 2007 at the stage at Waterloo, where Waterloo used to be at 6 Lamar. Amy Winehouse got her start South by Southwest 2007. You're going to hate me for starting to remember this song now that was all over everywhere 2007. I think they had something like 15 gigs over the space of 4 days. And I'm not even going to try to sing the song, but it's probably in your head now. And again, apologies for that. A Young St. Vincent played in 2007. And I'm not sure the context of this one, but this is Jonathan Demme talking to Emmylou Harris. She must have scored one of his films. Kind of cool, right? And then from the interactive perspective, we had Will Wright talking about The Sims, and he had just released a new game then. And strangely, he had just broken his arm. And so you can kind of see this cast on his left arm. And he was wearing this muscle shirt that kind of accentuated that or unaccentuated that. But cool to have him involved. But of course, the big story at South by Southwest 2007 was Twitter. If you were there or if you read about it, what Twitter did, they worked with us. They bought or they worked with us to rent roughly 20 big screen TVs. And we had these big screen TVs stationed around the convention center. Twitter was always nice enough to credit South by Southwest as where they launched, but the reality was they had launched 5 months earlier. So it wasn't entirely a new app. The other point of context here is that you probably are you may be aware that one of the co-founders of Twitter was Ev Williams, who we'll see in just a second. He had been coming to South by Southwest for many years, always had these cool little apps that were really neat, but generally didn't go anywhere after they were at South by Southwest. And I think we kind of had that same impression. Oh, this is another cool little, vanity project of Ev's. It won't really go anywhere. But we were wrong on that. Twitter actually won what was then called the South by Southwest Web Awards. It then became the South by Southwest Innovation Awards, and it is actually no longer as of 2026. But they won the best new app. That is a young and beardless Jack Dorsey at the microphone. He's got his hand on Ev Williams. This is the comedian Zay Frank, who was MC that year. I remember that The judges we had, there was roughly a tie, but in the judges' votes between Twitter and some other app, which I can't remember. And my colleague Sean O'Keefe came to me and said, "Well, who should we give the winner to?" And I like Ev. Let's give it to so they won best new app. But the reality was that they had already won the crowd by the time this awards presentation happened. Here's another photo of them at the 2007 event. I don't think that was our trophy. I don't know what trophy that is, but that's the crew. And another footnote, this gentleman, Jason Goldman, is the reason why Obama came to South by Southwest many years later. But again, another lecture for another time. Here's a story that I found recently, which is actually inaccurate because it says 2006 event. But you can read this. Twitter can thank the tech and media savvy throngs at South by Southwest for tripling their traffic at the 2006 event, should have been 2007, from 20,000 to 60,000 tweets a day. So it was a very small usership, but it tripled at South by Southwest. Huge bump. And people went back to their communities, talked about it. That bump continued. What happened after Twitter? The next year, South by Southwest 2008, you could argue, was the first time we started to have tech bros at South by Southwest, with the original tech bro being Mark Zuckerberg. This was his keynote with Sarah Lacey, which may have been the most disastrous keynote in the history of keynotes, since half the audience walked out about halfway through the session. But nonetheless, it was kind of cool to have involved. Not being cynical here, it did, his presence and what I think a lot of the audience members could see, that this indie organic movement of blogging, posting content online, that these guys had kind of a different vision for it, and it was going to go a different way in the future. So after Twitter in 2007, 2008, and for the next X number of years, every startup in the world wanted to be at South by Southwest to see that same kind of bump of 3 times your traction. Every VC in the world wanted to be at South by Southwest. He has actually spoken many times. Mr. Wonderful hasn't. I couldn't figure out a better way to illustrate VCs, but we had this huge influx in VCs wanting to discover the next Twitter before their competition did. It also led to all kinds of corporate overreach at South by Southwest. You may remember, this is the, may still have nightmares about the Doritos stage at South by Southwest, where Lady Gaga famously performed and vomited on stage. Again, this is all in the wake of Twitter at South by Southwest 2007. Think about Austin, how Austin changed after 2007. We started to have more and more tech broization of the city. Governor Abbott with Elon Musk, and I will in full disclosure say that we had Elon speak twice at South by Southwest, although I will argue that that was before Elon went completely crazy, or crazy. But yeah, the world of Elon and Austin is much, much different than those early photos we saw. This is the skyline we see today in Austin, Texas. A little bit different than what that skyline was in one of those first slides. This is a story from the New York Times, how Austin became one of the least affordable cities in America. And I think much of the secret sauce of Austin, much of the reason this place was so creative for so long is it was a very, very cheap place to live. I still think Austin is magical in so many ways, particularly this week, but I don't think it's a cheap place to live anymore, and certainly not as cheap as when I was growing up, when a lot of us in this room can remember 20 and 30 years ago. And then another story, musicians leaving Austin because of lack of affordability. And I think that's one of the biggest tragedies of cost of living, is that we've pushed out the creative class, much of the creative class that traditionally made Austin such a cool, such an innovative, such a fun place to live. These people haven't left completely. They've just moved out to the suburbs, places where it's slightly cheaper, but again, has changed the personality of the city significantly. Let's talk about the world post-2007. This is actually a picture of Kevin Seastrom from South by Southwest 2019. I think he actually spoke in 2008 at South by Southwest, and he spoke when Instagram was a 20-person company, and shortly thereafter they got bought by Facebook Meta. I put this photo up here because the world began to move to shorter form content, pictures, video, things like this online, which we hadn't seen before. Way cool. This new president is going to use social media. This was Barack Obama's first tweet. Things like Instagram eventually led to things like TikTok. This exaggeration of short form content, which you can very plausibly argue has made us all, our brains a little shallower, and that is probably not a good thing. We love that Barack Obama, or many of us love that Barack Obama was very active on social media. We maybe don't like where that ended up with candidate Donald Trump being even more aggressive on social media and using that to his favor to be elected president in 2016. And then again in 2024. And of course, the exploitation of social media by people such as this certainly led to a term that we've heard a lot of in recent years, fake news. We live in a post-truth era. What is this? Okay. So, on that note, fake news, I'm going to call bullshit on this entire presentation, or most of it. Let me say that these words, fake news, don't have to go back, can be used to describe much of my presentation tonight. Would South by Southwest have become more commercial if Twitter hadn't happened in 2007? Yes, I think it would have. The event was already trending in that direction. Did South by Southwest and South by Southwest 2007, cause Austin's population to boom? Yes, it helped or hurt, however you want to phrase that. But I think Austin was going to boom one way or another. Maybe South by Southwest sped that up a little bit. Would Tech Bros have taken over Austin without South by Southwest? Yes, I think that probably still would have happened. Would Austin and would South by Southwest have become more expensive if Twitter hadn't happened in 2007? Yes, definitely for Austin. Maybe not so much or not so quickly for South by Southwest, but that would have happened. Would Twitter have been successful even if it hadn't marketed itself so aggressively and so effectively at South by Southwest 2007? Yeah, I think they still would have become successful. Maybe not quite so fast and not quite with the OG community that was at South by Southwest at that time, but it would have happened one way or another. Would the world have moved to short form content even without Twitter happening at South by Southwest 2007? Again, this is going to happen one way or another. We just happened to kind of pour a little gasoline or a lot of gasoline on the fire. Would Donald Trump have become president in 2016 if not for the rise of social media? That one is probably more debatable since social media played such a huge role in his first campaign. But drawing a direct line to South by Southwest on that one is hopefully a little bit specious. So if so much of what I talked about in those first 35 slides was largely incorrect or grossly exaggerated, then what is the point of my presentation tonight? What is the point? Good question. The point of those first 35 slides was to reaffirm what I think everyone in this room knows, that technology has consequences. And even more so, technology has lots of downstream effects that may not be immediately obvious. Likewise, the point of those first 35 slides was that, in retrospect, I wish that I personally and that we as a team at South by Southwest had spent more time in deep thought, deep reflection, deep conversation, however you want to phrase that, about how social media would play out positively, and perhaps play out negatively. I will say our efforts were not entirely barren in that regard. Had a gentleman named Jaron Lanier speak at South by Southwest several times. If you've never read any of Jaron Lanier's stuff, I encourage you to. He is a skeptic, a naysayer, a devil's advocate on all kinds of technology. He initially spoke about VR. He's known as the father of VR, but has spoken on a number of other issues more recently. This is David Lowery. Remember the band Camper Van Beethoven? And Cracker. He actually, I remember reading a story in some magazine about how he said that South by Southwest was too boosteristic. That's the word of new technology. And I remember finding his email address and writing him an email and saying, "No, we're not. No, we're not." And I encourage you to come to South by Southwest to talk about how you feel. But he never responded to that email. More recently, I think we had scheduled Lena Khan to speak twice at the event. Both times she canceled last minute. I think they were both family emergencies. But if you recall, Lena Khan had done a lot to try to put some guardrails on big tech. And then one of the cool folks that we had speak at the 2021 event, which was entirely virtual because we were still living through the pandemic at that point, was Yuval Harari. If you've not read his books, and particularly Nexus, it is a great big picture analysis, thought-provoking read on how information systems play out in our society. Again, in retrospect, I wish we had showcased a lot more of these kinds of voices, these skeptical voices. Those kinds of voices, certainly harder to find than people who were saying how great social media would be and how social media would solve all our problems, unify us, erase the divisions in the world, which maybe it hasn't done, Kevin. It would have required a lot more effort on our part, the part of the South by Southwest organizing team, to find those voices because they were harder to find. But as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. And again, in retrospect, I wish we had done more there. Okay. Let's bring us back to the present, 2026. again, those first 35 slides really all point to here. Today, I think we are much farther along the path with AI, artificial intelligence, than we were in 2007 with social media. But in the context of 2007, in the context of what we saw at South by Southwest, in the context of what played out over the next few years, it concerns me, it greatly concerns me, and I'm not the only one, that we're making the same mistakes all over again. And particularly when I say we, I mean big US-based tech companies. This is unacceptable. This is wrong. This is unacceptable, particularly given that we've seen how this all plays out and how this plays out in negative ways. As humans, as citizens, as tech enthusiasts, for lack of a better term, we have these responsibilities to think about all the great things AI will do. These will probably come true. To think about all the negative things, the bad things that may come out of AI. These too will probably come true. To push our local, regional, international leaders to understand these technologies and to not be silent. You see something, say something. This is, of course, Dario from, help me here. There you go, thank you. Who has become a bit of a hero in the last 2 weeks by pushing back a little bit on the Pentagon. This is one of the more dire books about AI. If anyone builds it, everyone dies, which is kind of a worst case analysis of superintelligent AI. Some of the things in the book, I believe, some maybe again pushing too hard. But again, I think it's our responsibility to understand this full spectrum of positive and potential negative results. In somewhat a lighter vein, but along the same lines, our friend, longtime friend of the EFF, Cory Doctorow's new book, Enshittification, which describes how tech platforms go from being very useful to being less useful and can be applied to a lot of things in life. I encourage you to read this book and encourage you to hear me talk about this book on March 25th at the Austin Forum. That'll be a virtual presentation, so you can just do it from the convenience of your home. We'll also remind people there are a ton of sessions on AI at South by Southwest over the next 4 or 5 days. A lot of that is in the official program. A lot of that is in the unofficial program. So a lot of really smart people you can meet over the next few days. And again, encourage you to take advantage of all the brain power that's in Austin this week and to challenge these people if they're really pushing on the benefits of AI, to challenge them to think about what the negative consequences are. And there are lots of negative consequences, not the least of which is massive job loss. I also, and without too much smoke blowing, I mean, this is what you guys do at EFF. Think about technology. Think about all the great things that technology can do, and think about some of the problems that technology brings to us. So again, it's a great honor to be here to talk to you all tonight, to give you this context of where South by Southwest was 20 years ago and how that all changed and how that all played out. Thank you so much for listening. I will do a shameless plug for my friend in Austin who created this app called Curate Events, which uses AI to curate South by Southwest, but really makes it a lot easier to find the things. I also wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge our friend George Cummings, who passed away in February, one of the other founders of what was then called South by Southwest Multimedia, and a big supporter of South by Southwest, who again, unfortunately passed away. And thank you all for giving me your attention. This is the first time I've ever done this speech. I've done variants of it before, but I do think that 2007 at South by Southwest was a real tipping point and turning point. And the growth of South by Southwest has been great in many, many ways, and it's been not so great in many, many ways, much like the growth of Austin. Again, my big picture takeaway for you all for this presentation, this lecture is we can, we should, we must be more intentional, more thoughtful about all these things. And I don't think we were quite that intentional and thoughtful and strategic as we could have been at South by Southwest. Thank you.